Welcome, Eckhart and Arianna. We're backstage at Wisdom 2.0, kind of way back and upstage, I should say, at Wisdom 2.0. And we didn't have time for you all to be on stage this year at the conference, so we thought it would be nice to welcome you and have a short dialogue with you behind the scenes. So I'm just wondering what it's like to be in each other's presence, if you might want to say a few words about what you know of the other person or what you have felt from being in the other person's presence.
Well, I have learned so much from Eckhart, and I was very blessed on Thursday night, a couple of nights ago, to be in a small group where he spoke, and then to have dinner. And a couple of things that struck me from that experience. One was how Eckhart made it very clear at the beginning of the talk that he didn't know what he was going to say, and that he was going to speak exactly for 40 minutes because Kim, his partner, was going to stop him after 40 minutes. and it flew from him as though it was all scripted. And I was just telling Eckhart that the next morning, my daughter, who's 22, she's a senior in college, called me, and she was going through a really hard time. And I found myself repeating exactly what Eckhart had said about not identifying with your mind and not assuming that what your mind is telling you is the truth. And I went on, repeating. I even had some notes because I'm kind of a voracious note taker, so I was actually reading some of my notes to her. And then she mailed me, Mom, I don't know what I would do without you. And I felt like saying, actually, it's really Eckhart. And just one more thing, just listening to you now in your conversation with Mary, it was really wonderful to hear what you said about your father. Most of us have had difficult relationships with our parents. I mean, I was blessed to have a very amazing relationship with my mother. But what you said about the moment when you forgave him, even though it wasn't a mental process, it just rose from within you. It was very powerful. You could feel it in the room that people really took it in and were going through their own process of looking at their own relationships. So that's just a quick response to your question.
And Eckhart, how about with Arianna?
Well, like most people, I first knew you. Well, it's not real knowing through the TV screen. At that time, I was still watching television. Now, for the past 2 years, we haven't had cable. But I would still watch CNN and so on. And whenever you came on and had something to say about the political situation, or at the time, I think it was the Bush administration and all those things going on, and whatever you had to say, I felt this strong inner agreement. It's absolutely right and to the point, and nobody could have said it better. And so I always felt, even if I was doing something else, and says Arianna Huffington, I would always stop and watch what you had to say. It was always right. And then, of course, then we met last year very briefly and more this year. And then I've listened to a couple of your talks, and what I particularly enjoy, and the reason why your talks are so powerful for people and inspirational is, and this is an interesting thing I observed only with very few people, there is no change in the way you speak when you step on stage and start speaking into microphone from the way you speak casually to anybody, anywhere. With most people feel compelled the moment they talk in public and to an audience they unconsciously slip into a kind of role. They become the speaker. So there's an inner shift. They think they have to do that because probably unconsciously they believe they are not enough themselves. They're not enough. They have to be somebody. And so you can see this subtle shift the moment they start to speak into the microphone. There's a persona there that it's unconscious. The real power comes from those few, and those are the most inspirational speakers like yourself, who go through no shift from being engaged in casual conversation to speaking to an audience of 2,000 or 3,000 people. I've also observed it with Oprah when I was doing the webcast with her. We would often be sitting there, and she would talk casually to me. It was about to start in 20 seconds, they would say, 20 seconds to go, and she was still talking to me about the weather or whatever. And then 10 seconds before, she looked into the camera, and then the camera started rolling, and she talked in exactly the same way she had been speaking to me casually on camera. So when you're really yourself, which is what you are, then you can really connect with the people, and people love you for it, and they feel there is a power there. Most people don't know, so by trying to be somebody better than their deeper self, they actually obscure that power. And here I have another story that Oprah told during the webcast, because she was a newscaster in her early 20s at some local station, TV station. Her great aspiration was she wanted to be like Barbara Walters. I want to be a Barbara Walters. So one day she was reading the news in a the way she thought a newscaster should read the news. And there was a slip of the tongue. She was reading from the prompter, and she said the word Canada. Canada, and then she stopped reading the news and said, "Did I just say Canada? Of course I meant Canada." And at that moment, the persona that she had projected broke down. And then she experienced being herself. There was a different power coming through. She was no longer trying to be somebody else. So when the persona cracked through this little mistake, she just really discovered her true power. And so there's a great teaching in watching a person like Oprah or watching you, especially for people who also know you in your ordinary everyday life. Often people ask me, what's Oprah like in there? And I said, just the same as she is on the street. So that's power. So if people can learn that by being fully themselves, you don't need to play a role, just be fully yourself. And this is this greatest power. And so that's how I and other people experience you too.
Thank you. I'd never thought of that, but I think that also would explain why people have often such a fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
They say it's the biggest fear, the second fear being death by mutilation. And if actually you don't have to be somebody else when you speak, then that fear goes.
Yes. And as you know, I usually don't know what I'm going to say when I'm on stage. Now, for many people, that would be their greatest nightmare. You go on stage and you have no lines. You don't remember your lines, or you never had any. And so, in fact, some people say they have dreams like that, and then they terrible panic, can't breathe anymore. So if you could, and this goes back to being comfortable with not knowing, which is a transcendent state. And this is a reason to talk about another Greek, Socrates. Socrates, I believe it was the oracle at Delphi that pronounced Socrates the wisest of all men. And then people went to Socrates and said, well, do you know what the oracle of Delphi said? It said that you are the wisest of men. Why is that? Socrates said, as reported by Plato, they call me the wisest of men because I'm the only one who knows that he knows nothing. And I believe that those words have not been interpreted correctly by the professors of philosophy and so on, what he was actually talking about, because they think that he was that he obviously knew what he was talking about, he was just pretending not to know in his dialogues. And sometimes in Plato, it's written as if perhaps we get the impression that he's pretending not to know and then just by asking more questions, showing people that they're totally wrong. But I don't think he taught like that. There's a deeper meaning to I'm the only one who knows that he knows nothing. It means I am comfortable with a state of not knowing, which is presence, where there's no conceptualization. And by going into the state of not knowing, then the teaching arises,
Yes,
the
the
knowing
truth
arises.
arises.
And it's only because other people are uncomfortable with not knowing, and of course then the flow doesn't come. They think they should know, and that's the stage fright, if you don't
Yes.
have prescribed. So becoming comfortable with not knowing, I believe that was the secret of Socrates too, to be comfortable with that spaciousness. Trust is in there, deep trust, and then it comes.
I'm curious too whether, from what I know of both of you, you both have these unique expressions in the world, but are also very different. So Eckhart, for example, it would be difficult to see you running a very large media company in New York City. And Arianna, you might have a part of you that wants to be a hermit, but you love being out there.
Well, Eckhart is a very interesting kind of hermit. He's a hermit who is very comfortable in the world.
Yeah.
And who spends a significant amount of time in the world, and then actually that's kind of a dream. I definitely I think his life is kind of my ideal. I aspire to it. You know, when you can be fully present in the world and really seem to be enjoying it. You know, every time I've been with you in the world, I didn't have the sense, oh my God, I can't wait to get out of here and go back to my cabin, metaphorically. But at the same time, then to be able to have enough time to really be with yourself, recharge. I mean, believe it or not, I'm actually an introvert. I know you don't believe me, but I am. And I need a lot of time alone. And I have felt every emotion in my life, you know, including rage and deep pain and everything, but I have never felt loneliness. Because whenever I'm alone, I feel very at peace.
Well, we share that. I also love being alone, and I spend significant amounts during the day being alone. I must admit, however, to answer your question, I could not, to some extent I'm in the world, although I'm also an introvert like you, but I must admit I could not do what you do because you are much more engaged you're running a large organization and you're much more engaged in the things of this world, and that's wonderful to see because you're a bridge between the world of being and the world of doing, or between spirit and the world. So you're a bridge builder, and through you, spirituality is becoming. There are some other people also, of course, who contribute. Spirituality is becoming mainstream, and that's a wonderful function that you have in this world. But like Oprah, I couldn't do what Oprah does. She has inexhaustible energy, and I think you have too a lot of energy. And I do go out into the world, and when I'm in the world, I enjoy it, but for limited periods, and then I withdraw for sometimes long periods. There are days sometimes that I don't answer my emails, and there are days when I don't answer the phone. I'm sure you can't do that, except very occasionally when you take a vacation or holiday. So you're very active in the world without losing the beingness. You bring the being into the doing. That's a great gift. And I'm deeper in the being, and then I'm kind of 30%, 25% out in the world, and 75% in being. You are more balanced. I think you're almost 50% in being and 50% in the world, and it's very rare.
But you're both on the same team.
Yeah, I'm very happy we're on the same team. But it's really, I've always loved that line about being in the world but not of the world.
Yes.
And I found the hard way that I had to learn to be in the world and also be able to allow time and practices to regenerate in a regular way and not let the world's demands take that over. That's not easy, and I've done it badly for a long time, and I feel that ever since my collapse, when I started from exhaustion, when I started prioritizing sleep and meditation and these practices that regenerate me, honestly, I feel that I've been so much more effective. That's what is so interesting, and that's like the paradox that so many people who are completely in the world think they cannot afford not to be in the world because they wouldn't be as effective managing companies or countries or whatever it is. And the truth is completely different. In my new book, actually, I quote Bill Clinton saying that the worst mistakes in my life, he did not identify what mistakes, he said, were made when I was exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
So and I think a lot of us could say that.
Yes.
So I'm conscious of your time, and I'm also conscious it's somewhat late in the day. Is there any last thoughts you want to share?
Just enjoying every moment today. I have enjoyed it, enjoying this moment, so it's wonderful. And it's unfolding as it should.
Yes, I want to say how grateful I am about the opportunity I had over the last 3 days to spend real time with you. And I want to say to you, Søren, how grateful I am for what you've created, for really building this home that we feel we can return, not just every year, but in the course of the year. And thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.